Hello and welcome to the Friday, June 27th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, and this episode brought to you by the SANS.edu graduate certificate program in Purple Team Operations is recorded in Stockholm, Germany. Well, we got a big supply chain security story to start out with today. This story was broken by Koi Security. The problem here is the use of Visual Studio Code clones. Now, Visual Studio Code, of course, a Microsoft product. It comes with its own extension store, and this extension store has had issues in the past. We talked about this here in this podcast a couple times, but there are a couple clones, like, for example, Cursor, the editor used a lot with AI projects. And Cursor, because it's not a Microsoft product, but it is a clone of Visual Studio Code, cannot use the official Microsoft extension store. In order to fix this, well, we have Open-VSX. Open-VSX is an extension store for all these different Visual Studio Code clones that cannot use the official Microsoft store. The problem with Open-VSX was that they had two different ways how a developer could update an extension. One is very basic, just upload the extension to them, but then there's another little bit more convenient way of doing it where they're auto-updated, and you basically just add your extension to the list of extensions for Open-VSX to auto-update, and then whenever it recognizes there is a new version, it will download your extensions, and then it will run npm install. And that's where the problem happens. With npm install, the GitHub action that Open-VSX uses to update the extensions, well, is actually executing code provided by the developer of the extension. And that code has access to the secret token that's being used by this GitHub action, and as a result, could basically update, alter any other extension published in Open-VSX, putting that entire ecosystem at risk. So this is a little bit different than some of the prior supply chain issues with extensions. Usually it was a malicious developer that sort of bypassed whatever checking happens or doesn't happen in these extension stores to publish a particular extension. But with this flaw in the mechanism, how these extensions are actually being maintained, an attacker could very well modify any trusted, often used extension and, for example, add malicious code. So pretty big deal here. Luckily, Koi Security worked with Open-VSX to have them fix this particular flaw, and it should be good now. And researchers from German security company ERNW did publish an initial brief blog post outlining 3 different Bluetooth vulnerabilities that they found in chipsets made by Airoha, if I pronounce this name correctly. Could also be Airoha, not really sure. But the big problem here is that these chipsets are, first of all, used in a number of large name brand headsets, like, for example, Bose and Sony and others. And the vulnerabilities do allow for a compromise of the headset, in particular for the use of the headset as an eavesdropping device. The problem here is in part a custom protocol that this chipset implements that allows direct memory manipulation of the headset. And well, to make things more interesting, authentication for this protocol is flawed or not quite present, and these details are not yet really made public. But with this, an attacker is then able to essentially pair to the headset and use it, for example, as a microphone to listen in. Now, if the headset is already paired with another device, this connection would be disrupted. So that would be notable to a victim if all of a sudden their headset no longer works, no longer connected to their phone or whatever they have it connected to. But in particular, if the headset is just idle, it would, of course, be fairly easy then in the terms of like not being noticeable for an attacker to actually then hijack the headset and use it as a microphone. All of these attacks, of course, require that the attacker is within Bluetooth distance of the victim. Airoha did publish patches for their software development kit in order to fix these issues, but of course, they now have to be rolled out into firmware and such to make them actually available to end users for all of the affected devices. And Cisco released updates for its Identity Services Engine. And this update, among a number of not so critical vulnerabilities, does address two critical vulnerabilities that allow unauthenticated remote code execution. So the CVSS score for these vulnerabilities is a perfect 10, and the attacker could completely compromise this critical part of your network security. This is certainly something that you probably want to address before going away for the weekend if you are running this particular solution. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks for listening. Hope to see some of you at SANS Fire. If you aren't registered yet, well, still not too late. We'll start in about 3 weeks, I think, is when SANS Fire will start in Washington, D.C. And of course, there's also an option to attend classes and many of the additional events online. But we do have some special on-site events. For example, our honeypot workshop, where we'll give away a few honeypots for anybody interested in running them. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and talk to you again on Monday.